but I think we'll get started because we have a full day here. And I just want to welcome everybody to our practice facilitation webinar for October the 7th. And your audio connection has been placed on mute, but you can always use the chat feature in the WebEx to communicate. Just chat to all participants to send your message. And if you are having technical difficulties, you can chat to change it to talk. And Leanne, I believe you'd be able to help them, right?
For sure.
Perfect. Next slide. So I just wanted to remind our group that we now have a new vision and mission statement. So our vision is every practice facilitator is supported to facilitate implementation of the patient medical home. And our mission is to build a culture of continuous quality improvement. So the next slide, Leon. So we've been practicing or trying out this poll everywhere. So if everybody that's on the line could, in their browser, just put pollev.com /app, or sorry, no, /PFN331 to get on. And then what we're wanting to do is, as a practice facilitator, what values are most important to you? So we were hoping that we could take a couple of minutes and everybody could just put in order what one of these 12 items would be your most important to your least important as a practice facilitator. So I'll just give you a few minutes to put that in. We got a couple. So continuous quality improvement and connections is leading right now. Changing up a little bit. So we're hoping to use these as part of our values for the Practice Facilitator Network. Continuous quality improvement seems to be staying at the top, though, for the most part here. Wow. Okay, do we think we have pretty much everybody's had enough time? Nope, there's still a few more changes. Okay, so I think what we'll be doing is using these after in order of our values. So as you can see, continuous quality improvement, collaboration, then evidence-based, connections, safe patient care, participation, time, support, inclusion, joy in work. I'm surprised that one's down so far. Community, and I can't see the last one because the little timer's over that, sorry. Inclusion, I'm thinking, is the one, right? Yes, I think it's inclusion. Okay, so we'll move on to our next slide. So as always, just a quick reminder of how the WebEx reference works. You can always use the new controls. The middle one is the chat button. You can click on that to open up and ask questions. And then you can also either send it straight to the host or to all participants, or of course to the top for technical support. Okay, next slide. So let's just use our chat box there. Can everybody please type in their name and organization that you are representing? Also, if you're in a room full of people, could you just tell us how many people are in the room and where you're at? And the other part is, if you are a new practice facilitator, say hi. We're getting lots of people here. And great, we have lots of people on today. That's good to see. Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide, Leanne. So we have another poll everywhere. So how often do you attend these Practice Facilitator Network webinars? Oh, we have a first. Wow. So we have about half of everybody that is on every month. And then we have 40, going up and down as often as I can. We have a few first-time people. And we also have a few people that just join infrequently. That's good to see. Great. We'll go on to Lori Chalmers, and she's going to talk to us today about the Practice Facilitator Self-Assessment. Are you there, Lori?
Yeah, I sure am. So actually, it's going to be me as well. I'm going to pass the floor off to my colleague Wanda Trong as well to provide a little bit of the update. Leanne, next slide, please. So I'm here to talk about the Practice Facilitator Self-Assessment today. So at the September webinar, you heard a little bit about the competency document, the Practice Facilitator competencies, and then the accompanying Practice Facilitator Self-Assessment. And this document is a refresh of the original Improvement Facilitator Self-Assessment that was done in 2013. It was first created for Alberta screening and prevention, and then as we started to incorporate a broader vision beyond just Alberta screening and prevention to talk about the patient's medical home, we did some tweaking. And we realized that we needed to refresh both the competencies and the self-assessment to really reflect the work that we were doing around the implementation of the patient's medical home. And in late June, we finally completed the two documents. There's a group of people who are on the call with us today who were instrumental in helping us to frame them and review them. And so thanks to all of those individuals as part of this community who were able to help to do that work. So with that, I'm going to finish my introduction, and I'm going to pass the floor over to Wanda, who is our evaluation lead and who's actually taken the self-assessment, taken it to where we can now get it complete online. So over to you, Wanda. And Leanne, next slide, please. I think, Wanda, are you there? Oh, we can't hear her. Wanda, I think you're called into the wrong line if you're there. Okay, I'm going to just take it away then. If Wanda, if you're able to join us, then I'll get you to pipe in. So the assessment is created as a tool for you for self-reflection and for professional development. there's a little bit written about why one does a self-reflection, and it really helps to move you along and to see where you are with your competencies. So we've had a few people test the self-assessment. The completion is about 20 to 30 minutes. We do anticipate the first year, if you haven't reviewed the paper copy of it, if you're going for the first time, it is pretty meaty. So you will want to take a deeper dive into it and take your time reading it. So it might be a little bit longer the first time. Please check in with your PCN leadership if you are planning to complete it on PCN time. It is a voluntary piece of work, so please make sure that you have the okay from your leadership before completing it on their time. Next slide, please. So we did want to let you know about the data use disclosure. So we are asking for identifiable information. So we are asking for your name and your email address, and it will be stored. So we can allow for analysis and provide you with analysis over time. So year over year, when you complete the assessment, you can see what your progress is. We are planning to aggregate the data by PCN in zone. But we need to have more than 5 data points. That's the standard that we use. And so that's how we're going to be using the data internally at the AMA, as well as at the zone level. So there's going to be a couple of the evaluation consultants who are on the team who are able to access the data, but we won't be using it in the AMA. We won't be using the individual data to do any of the reviews. So it's just going to be you that gets your results, gets that individual copy of the results, and then it'll be up to you whether or not you want to share or not share the report. On the right-hand side there is a little snip of one of the pages, so you can see what the report looks like. You'll get an overall score, and then there's going to also be scoring by the 4 competency domains as well. So next slide, please. Launching when? So tomorrow, the survey is going to be launched. Barring any technical difficulties, there was some test data in there, and Interceptum is the company that we're using. It's a Canadian-based company. They're doing a reset tonight, so we will test it first thing in the morning, and if it's all good to go, you'll be getting a survey link tomorrow. We're going to keep this survey open for approximately 1 month for you to complete it before it gets closed off and the data gets analyzed. And the people who are registered as members of the Practice Facilitator Network will get emailed a link to complete it. You can share the link with others who are not in the network. We are asking who is working as a practice facilitator and not, and we'll be analyzing the data that way. Although the little caveat with that piece is for those practice facilitators who are new and going through training, they will be getting the link through the training, as it's a part of the new practice facilitator training. So watch out for that in your email inbox. I'm not sure if Wanda was able to join us or not. If not, she can pipe in if there's anything that I've missed today. And otherwise, please chat in if you have any questions. You can put them into the chat box, or feel free to post them onto the discussion board. And with that, I'll pass it back to Charlotte.
Thanks, Laurie. Does anybody have any questions for Laurie? If you would like, you can put it in the chat box there. And then we're going to move on to CII-CPAR with Mark Lamb and Barb McCaffrey. And we would like you to put any questions into the chat box because Barb does have quite a lengthy presentation. And Barb or Mark, are you there?
Yeah, thanks. It's Barb here, and I'll bring in Mark in a little bit. So just wanted to pass on to this group today an update on CII-CPAR. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the project update and deployment progress. Next slide. So as of today, we are implemented in all zones across the province, 33 clinics, 184 providers, and we actually have a number of clinics slated to go live this month. So our number is going to jump quite a bit. Next slide. So because of the implementation, this data is from early September, we already have from 46,500 Albertans, they have something in their NetCare record called a Community Encounter Digest. So for the first time, there is community information informing NetCare about the encounters that those patients are having in community clinics. And that comes from over 140,000 patient encounters. So we're getting some stories from emergency docs as well that are using this information to inform their encounters with patients in ER. And they're really excited because they often describe themselves as flying blind. And because of specialist and consultant participation, there are almost 18,000 consult reports that are now in NetCare from community clinics. Next slide. So the biggest advancement with CII-CPAR is that we now have a new feature called e-notifications. This is live in MicroQuest HealthQuest. So e-notifications are automated messages that deliver directly into the EMR of a CPAR physician participant about his CPAR panel or her patients when they've had an ED visit, hospital admission, or discharge. They appear in HealthQuest in the lab report tab of the appointment list for the providers. It provides some information about the date of the event, and it provides a description. And they are delivered twice daily into the EMR at 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. There is a feature, and this is described in the team toolkit, that on go-live day, just because of how the technology works, they receive e-notifications for the past 14 days as well. Next slide, please. So this shows a couple screenshots. The one on the left shows what a notification appears like when it's opened in the EMR, and it tells the provider what the event was, where it took place, the attending provider, as well at the bottom, if that patient happens to be paneled to more than one CPAR participant, then it lists the name of the other participants as well. Once it's been opened, it always sits in the patient's chart. In HealthQuest, it sits in the lab report area. We have been looking at the data from the earliest participants. And in fact, since we built this slide, we even have more detailed averages. But physicians are receiving between 0 and 2 a day. Most of them are for emergency department visits, but we're following the averages of these notifications and getting averages per panel size. Next slide. So here we have a poll everywhere question. So in order to get ready for e-notifications, one of the things that we're recommending is that you have an understanding of the current state for dealing with notifications. So the question is, of the clinics you work with, how many have set processes for dealing with notices that a patient from the practice has been hospitalized or had an ED visit? And while you're putting your poll numbers in there, we do realize that the present state of this information getting to clinics is rather inconsistent across the province, and it might be a process in one region that's different than another. And so there hasn't been a steady state across the province. So this is good. So good to know that where clinics sit. But we do recommend, and this has been a new addition to the team toolkit for facilitators and clinic site liaisons, to understand what the current state is of the clinic for dealing with these notices before a clinic goes live with e-notifications. Next slide, please. I will also mention that our timelines for TELUS EMRs still are in Q1 for TELUS Wolf. So we're saying by the end of March. And we heard Q2 for PS Suite and MedAccess. So we're saying by the end of June 2020 for those EMRs. Right now, QHR Accuro is still getting prepared to go live with the first clinics. We had a little bit of a delay with them, but the good thing is because they're looking at their quality assurance processes, which is really important. And we will be expecting to go live with QHR this fall. So next, I just wanted to point out some information about the early evaluation data. On our website, on the Tools and Resources page, is a very comprehensive document from our HQCA partner evaluators. There's some really good information in there. The CII-CPAR project team has already used quite a bit of that information for process improvement, but I would urge you to take a look at it, and there will be something posted on the Collaborate page associated with more detailed information on the evaluation information. Next slide. Next slide. So some of the improvements that we have made associated with the evaluation has been improving the clinic onboarding experience. We are also working with clinics to build best practices as we get ready to go live and do go live with CII-CPAR. And finally, in the area of communications, because there's quite a few parties involved, including PCN roles like yourselves as practice facilitators at the front end working with clinics, the AMA team, it segues to e-health support services, the vendors get involved, and then it's usually back to e-health support services as well. But we have a lot of work as well going on in communications, both to at the provincial level. We have something we should be expecting soon from the chair of the steering committee responsible with this, which is the Assistant Deputy Minister, and more that are coming out regularly. Next slide. So a couple of the processes that we have improved has been the paperwork, and the new privacy impact assessment policy has allowed clinics to go faster once they update their PIA, which has been a really good improvement, recognizing that there's still room for more improvement. And when it comes to privacy impact assessments, the work still needs to be done to update a privacy impact assessment, and more supports are being formed to help with that work as well. Next slide. So we're going to transition to Mark now. Mark works with South Calgary PCN, and South Calgary PCN was one of 4 PCNs that participated in the limited production rollout. So they were in early in the project. And next slide. And Mark, how about you introduce yourself and the clinic that you have been working with associated with CII-CPAR.
Thank you so much, Barb. Can everyone hear me? Good?
Yep. Okay.
So I'm a facilitator at the South Calgary Primary Care Network, and currently we have 2 clinics that are live with CPAR and CII, and we have 2 more clinics coming on board in the next few weeks. Now, all of these 4 clinics are what we call our original pilot clinics. These were our early adopters. These are the ones who panel very well, and these are the ones who typically sign up for every single pilot project. If you could roll to the next slide, please. So with most of these clinics, Circle Medical was the first clinic that came on with us. And with the first clinic, initially when we went through the CPAR-CII training, what was really intimidating was how thick the toolkit was and how much paperwork was involved initially in setting up everything. But when you actually get into the sign-up process, both CGI, eHealth, and AMA have been super helpful with support, with answering any sort of questions, and the actual sign-up process is a lot easier than it looks. And to make it even better, I believe AMA has made the process even simpler. So previously it used to be 4 or 5 forms, now it's only 3 or 4 forms. And with the new toolkit and the clinic journey guide, it makes everything extremely streamlined. And the good thing is they're always there to talk and always there to help. The other portion that we have found to be a huge success is the CII portion of the project. Now, we mentioned previously that emergency data receiving e-notifications, while that's not live yet, most of the physicians I speak to, that's what they're most excited about. They're excited to know when their patients are seen in emergency, and vice versa. I think it'll be a valuable tool for emergency doctors to be able to pull up these histories of patients, and especially with what we have, the Opioid Response Initiative coming up, it's a really valuable tool for a patient and the doctor to know each other's histories. And then the other portion with setting up, the configuration to actually enter this stuff into the EMR and prepare for the first upload was very simple, at least for MedAccess. All it really takes is you get a panel ID numbers back from TELUS, you enter into the computer, and like magic, it happens overnight. And then lastly, in terms of success stories, Chinook PCN will be familiar with this, but us at the South Calgary PCN, we've created something called the panel change request form. So that's something that a patient can take from their old provider to their new provider and say, new provider to their old provider and say, I've decided to doctor with someone else. Please remove me from your panel, send all relevant paperwork you have to the new physician. And while we're not using it too much right now because it's still a pilot project, we expect that when CII-CPAR goes fully live across the province, there's going to be a lot of these panel conflicts, and this is one of our ways to address that conflict. And please go to the next slide. Now, some of the challenges with CPAR CII, a large portion of it for the clinics have been updating the PIA portion. And I don't know if a lot of you know, but the privacy office is kind of swamped right now. So it's a lot of effort to update the PIA. It's a lot of effort for a lot of the clinic managers because they don't have training in privacy. The good thing about this is the privacy office that we've spoken to, they've been very, very helpful, especially when you tell them it's for CPAR CII, very helpful in taking a look at any amendments and making recommendations. And I think the new policy that doesn't require you to receive confirmation back, you can just proceed as soon as you submit your PIA. That will speed up the process a lot more, and hopefully a lot more clinics will be coming on board to CII-CPAR. One of the challenges we're facing right now is because it's in such a limited production rollout, there's not that many physicians, not that many patients, so we're not actually receiving a lot of data or a lot of panel conflict reports. This could be frustrating a little bit, but it's part of being a limited production rollout. So it's why I think it's important that once it's rolled out live to everywhere, the more data we have, the better we can use all these things for. Now, we at the South Calgary PCN, we've had something called the multi-panel patient list for a while through our Plexus system. So how that works is every single patient, every single doctor who works with us on Medical Home uploads their panel onto our Plexus system. And within our Plex system, we have our own version of the panel conflict report. So physicians in our PCN can already see if any of their patients are doctored elsewhere. Now, one of the challenges, even with this technology that we previously had, it's very difficult for physicians to use this data meaningfully. What we try to do is we try to educate the physicians into turning this into a patient education process. One, it makes a good business case if they want to, if they talk to a patient and say your care is better provided here. That's a good business case, but it's also a good patient care and quality of care because it improves continuity. But I think this will be really, really helpful once e-notifications actually come on and once a lot more patients sign on to CPAR CII or physicians. And then lastly, there's been some one-off data technical challenges with TELUS, with the AHS login page. But another good thing about this is it's been resolved fairly quickly, and we are not having any issues anymore. Next slide, I believe. Yeah, so I don't know if Barb wanted to talk about this, but the updated toolkit, now I'm typically guilty of not reading everything that I get in my email, but the new updated toolkit is something that I think everyone who is participating in CII-CPAR should absolutely go through at least once. More importantly, the clinic journey, like I talked about before, is really something that's really helpful. And I don't know if Barb wants to jump in here.
Yeah, I'll jump in too. So we have been hearing feedback that these are three of the key resources that are the most supportive. We have the team toolkit, we have the checklist, and we also have PowerPoint presentations that are now available on the website for the 4 EMRs that are in production, I'll say. And they should be a really useful tool for a facilitator working with a clinic to give them the full orientation to CII-CPAR, and then that would put them in the position that they can make the decision to complete a confirmation of participation form, which starts a whole new segue of steps with the project. And Mark, I know these didn't exist in this form when you started in the springtime, and they've evolved, and we actually have to update these practically monthly. Next month or later this month with Acuro going live, we have more to add as well. So I think that you would find them useful in the field should you need to give an orientation to a clinic. And Mark, you said you took a look at them as well and thought that they would be useful as well.
Yeah, they're very different from the ones we received back in April. I think it's a great thing that's being constantly updated because there are a lot of things that are constantly changing with CII-CPAR.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. And thanks for sharing your story. So I just want to remind everybody that these tools are available on our Tools and Resources page. And they are on both topalbertadoctors.org and top.albertadoctors.org today. So thanks so much for the opportunity. And Lori, will segue back to you.
Thank you, Barb.
Thanks, Mark.
So Lori, I'll take it to her, or do you want to take it?
Oh, no, it's all you, Charlotte.
Okay. So thanks, Barb and Mark. And Mark, Lori just wanted you to know that she loves that your clinic is wanting conflict. That's really great. So when you start getting them, I'd like to hear more about that. So,
yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll go on to our next presenter. Our next presenter is Jen Bowles, and she's also from South Calgary PCN. And Jen's going to talk about opioid process and improvement that's been happening in her primary care network. Jen?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
I just want to start out by saying that I work with a small but mighty team, and everything that I'm about to share with you, we learned together. So if you can go to the first slide, please. Now, I'm sure that most of you are aware that this opioid initiative is a big initiative, but it's a good one. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and maybe a tiny bit stressed, you're not alone. Even though we're still at the very beginning stages of this work, I'd like to share a few things that we've learned so far. So we started this work by approaching teams who were already engaged in patients' medical home or who we knew had a special interest in opioids. The first few friendlies that we encountered were very open, and helpful, but it didn't take long before we started encountering a lot of resistance as physicians and teams had assumptions about what the ask was. We found that most physicians and clinic teams are aware of the opioid crisis, but we also found that most physicians assumed that the initiative meant taking unattached opioid-addicted patients and having them sitting in their waiting rooms while actively going through withdrawal. Not a pretty picture. So once we realized how prevalent this thinking was, we decided to change our approach from, once we realized how prevalent this thinking was, we decided to change our approach from, we want to talk to you about your patients taking opioids, to, we'd like to get your feedback about how we can best approach this work. This actually had a big effect on how we were received, and it helped open the door to having the conversation with the patients about their own patients on opioids, physicians. Now, as part of the opioid initiative, each zone was given grant dollars, and the Calgary zone chose to put some of that money towards an educator and an IF lead. Both of these ladies, Susan and Prabjot, if you're listening, a shout out to both of you, have been instrumental with our meetings with physicians because they have been immersed in this initiative from the beginning, and they contain a wealth of knowledge and experience. Really, really appreciated them. Second slide, please. Now, once we knew the physicians we were going to approach, we decided to use the ADCAR model to determine where the physicians were at in terms of stage of change. as we started to approach physicians and teams, we are using a spreadsheet that Mark so brilliantly created for us to track which physicians had received a letter from the PCN about opioid process improvement work, who we had gone out with to have a discussion, and who had declined the work. The idea is to keep track of who we're working with, where they're at in the work, and who we can reapproach at a later date if they initially declined. Also, there are 2 events being held here in Calgary this week, actually, around managing opioids in primary care. So we are anticipating that after the physicians attend, they may be more open to this work because, as we all know, physicians talking with physicians can precipitate change. So the next slide, we want to get some feedback from all of you. Can you please go to your poll and answer, has anyone else ever applied ADCAR for engaging teams? Wow. That's great. And for those of you that haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. It does actually work. A side note to this conversation as well is that our team realized that we needed to ADCAR ourselves before we went out and approached the physicians, and that also made a big difference in how secure we felt going out to speak to them. Okay, next slide, please. Our PCN is currently working with 14 physicians on opioid process improvements, and while we're still in the early stages of this work, we've been able to do some PDSAs with clinic teams. We've implemented some new processes in clinics, including improving EMR workflows and utilizing point-of-care reminders and templates. Another one of my colleagues, Courtney, mapped the POMI tool for Accuro and uploaded it to the cloud, so now all our Accuro clinics can now access this and have it right in the EMR. And I believe TELUS will have the POMI tool embedded in their EMRs very soon. We've also helped teams clearly define their roles and responsibilities, as well as helping them to optimize workflow with the complex care nurse who is available from the PCN. Our complex care nurses have really taken a big interest in this and are really being a benefit to the clinics. Next slide. If you haven't seen this tool before, it's the Opioid Process Improvement Change Package, and it contains a list of improvement ideas, measures, and tools to use with teams. And the yellow arrows show the potentially better practices that we've tried out with teams so far with some pretty great success. For example, one of our clinics has implemented a process for assessing and tracking patients with OUD by putting chronic opioid use or acute opioid use in the problem list. And this, of course, makes it searchable. Next slide, please. Participation in the demonstration project has taken a bit longer, but it seems that as soon as the physician has implemented one or more of the frameworks, or has even really started cleaning up their med list in preparation for doing this work, the offers of care are kind of an obvious addition. It's really easy to implement in the EMR, really easy to sign up. So I really encourage you to try and get that going in your clinic. Also, as part of this project, the AMA provided us with an implementation support person who has been very helpful with general questions, specific clinic questions, and generally putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And by pieces, I mean EMR pieces with the clinical pieces and the facilitation pieces, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. Lessons learned. So this is really important. We are fortunate to have 2 physicians championing this work. One of them came on board because I bugged him incessantly. And believe me, we've picked their brains a lot. They have also given us the chance to get some feedback on some of the tough questions that we've been asked by other physicians, because some of them, wow, questions are just, right over our head. So if you can utilize your champions, and like the slide says, when you meet resistance, plant seeds and approach later. So use your champions to help you educate yourself before going out to the tough clinics. The tough clinics, if you meet tough ones, just plant seeds, just have a little chat, you will come back later. I really encourage you to meet with your team regularly, and I mean your facilitation team, because as facilitators, we really need to feel prepared and supported in this work. If we don't, it's a tough road. And it's okay to feel overwhelmed in the beginning. It will begin to make sense as you move forward and learn from other physicians. Slide 7, please. Or next slide. And also, this is huge. This has been really huge for our team. Use the top website. It has lots of great resources, and make sure you know what supports you have available to you in your zone and through the AMA, because I'm not kidding you, it makes a huge difference, huge difference. Next slide, please. So next steps. We're right now in the process of sending out a reminder email to all our member physicians, reiterating the opioid initiative and our desire to meet and work with them. We noted in the email that there is funding attached to these meetings, so we anticipate this to be an incentive for them to meet with us. As I mentioned earlier, we have 2 CME events coming up this week, and the event in South Calgary sold out very quickly, so we're expecting a lot of energy to build through these events. And of course, we'll be following up with all of the physicians who attend this event. Lastly, as we grow more confident in our work, we are planning to reapproach all the physicians who initially declined, thanks to Mark's lovely spreadsheet. And on that note, we have one more question for everybody. Next slide, please. Have you been able to approach any physicians in your PCN about starting opioid process improvement work? For those of you that are saying, no, not yet, don't worry about it. It's coming, and you have a lot of support now. That's great. Thank you so much for contributing to these questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
So, Jen, there's a couple of questions here. One is, did you use a tool to help your teams to define their roles and responsibilities?
Well, I don't know if I'd say we used a tool specifically. We sat down, the 3 of us sat down together and tried to decide how best to roll this out. We chatted with our AMA representative. We chatted with the ladies that were hired by the zone, the educator and the IF lead. And we found that in the beginning, to go out, when we were out meeting with physicians, we took the educator with us. And as we listened to her describing the opioid initiative, and as we talked to our medical director, who is also the champion for this work, we really learned that all of us were it was our role to just lead the clinic in the work. So I'm not sure if I would say we actually had a specific tool, but we definitely, it was chatting with our physicians to find out how we could best help them.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions for Jen? I was just going to share that last week I was actually in attendance in Red Deer at a presentation night, and part of the panel around physicians in the room that were there that have been starting patients on Suboxone and really pushing forward with the opioid work. And one of the physicians that was there really made me feel like the stuff we're doing to push forward with this is actually starting to work. He has been prescribing Suboxone for the last year, and he just told everybody the other night that his best day was about a week ago when he had a young woman come in who he had started on Suboxone, and she had come in for some follow-up, and she was able to tell him that she took her daughter to the park for the first time, and she couldn't remember how long. And he got quite teary-eyed at the podium when he was talking about this, and it just made me really think that some days are tough when we're trying to go and talk to the physicians and do this work, but that one story really helps me to keep going. So I just thought I'd share that. And thanks, Jen, for being on the presentation today.
Thank you. That was a lovely story.
So can we go to the next slide? So this slide is just put in each webinar just to let you know that we do share resources on our Practice Facilitator Network platform on a Collaborate page. And you can go there to find any additional resources, and you can also find the presentation from today and any other presentation we've done in previous webinars. So you would go to pcnpmo.ca, click on Collaborate, and it says Improvement Facilitator Network. Next slide. Oops. And if you'd like to join our Collaborate, you can send an email to info@pcnpmo.ca. In the subject, just put Join IF Network Collaborate website. Include your first and last name, email, contact number, the PCN or clinic or organization you work for, what your role is, and that you would like to join the IF Network website. Next slide. You will get an email back in regards to joining. And then the Collaborate website, we host a section called Collaborate, and so you can ask questions there. You can share resources that you've used at your clinic and would like to share with the rest of the network, and we would be greatly appreciative of that. Email will be received from the IF network at albertadocs.org. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can email us at ifadmin@albertadocs.org. And we do have webinars the first Monday of each month, except for holidays, from 2 to 3 p.m. And we'd love you to join us. Next slide. So we have one more question here. What other topics would you like to see on the webinar? So I guess we'd just like you to put in one-word answers. Is that right, Mia? Or can it be questions?
It can be a sentence.
It can be a sentence. Okay. So I'll just give everybody a chance to put in, is there any topics that you would like to learn more about over the next year? This will just help the co-design team in setting up the next few webinars over the next few months. More on CII-CPAR, perfect. Training opportunities. Team development. Other initiatives not funded by grants, but inspired by PCN, physicians, nurses, patients. That's really nice. I like the ADCAR one because I'd like to see that one. This is great. Thanks, guys, for all the input. That's really good. Sure. Nope, a few more. An improvement party. Yay. Great. Thank you so much for everybody having input. We really appreciate it. It makes our job on the co-design team so much easier. If we can go to the next slide. The last one that we'd like to know is, let us know how you liked the webinar today, and you can also put that in through the poll everywhere. And oh, we're getting little spots all over the place here. and for the most part, people seem to enjoy today's webinar. So we're about 10 minutes early, but I'm sure everybody can use a few minutes back in their day, and I would really like to thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next month. Thanks.